how critical it is when you are hiring that executive team, or especially that first number two, that you're not hiring someone who's a copy of you, but somebody who's complementing you.
Welcome to today's episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I am one of your hosts, David Gillen, and we've got the privilege of having Ify with us with Offor, and we are just excited to have her on the call. Welcome, Ify.
Thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I apologize. I should have said Ify Walker. That way the listeners can all know who we're talking to
It's all
on
right.
there. But well, just tell us a little bit about you. Where are you calling in from, Ify?
I am calling in from Wisconsin, of all
Nice.
places. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we are delighted to have someone from the northern regions talking to us today. Then, tell us a little bit about how you got started, why you got started. Tell us about O4 and what was the genesis of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, David. It's interesting. I, in some ways, sort of fell into this work. I was stepping away from a really big job at a large nonprofit, and I got a call from a board member, a CEO and founder who was getting ready to step down, and he essentially said, "Hey, I think you're fantastic. Come and meet my board, and if they like you, you'll be the next CEO." And I was sort of taken aback by that. I didn't know people got jobs like that. And I respectfully declined it. I said, look, this isn't the right opportunity for me, but give me a couple days and I'll think of a couple people. And he said, well, how much do you charge for that? I also didn't know that was a thing. So I said, I'll get back to you in 24 hours. And '04 was born. And that was 13 years ago. And so the backstory here, though, is that I've sort of always had a fascination with talent and how people not only acquire certain roles, but how they succeed in them. And in my previous line of work, where I essentially parachuted into new communities and opened new offices, the most important thing that I could do before I was leaving a community was to help them hire their executive director. And so I knew how important it was to get the right person for the right stage of growth, and that fascination really played out as I started '04.
That's fantastic. I love how opportunity just kind of appears at times,
Yes,
but it's, are we ready to take advantage of it, right?
right.
Because not everyone is, right? Some people are like, whoa, let me do my thing, don't go change the things on me. But you've now kind of figured out more than just a side gig. You've built a team around it. You're becoming well known. You place people all over the country now. So uh, you've got to this stage, and it's a serious business. You're not the only one placing anymore. Other people are doing it for you, and you've probably learned some amazing lessons. What's a nugget or two you could share with us? What's something that now is making a big difference for your team because you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. There have been so many lessons, but some of the ones that really stand out for me from a team perspective is one, just how critical it is when you are hiring that executive team, or especially that first number two, that you're not hiring someone who's a copy of you, but somebody who's complementing you, right? And so that was just a really important lesson that I had to learn, quite frankly, the hard way, right? I, like a lot of entrepreneurs, was looking for, someone who was doing things like me, right? And you don't need another Efi. We actually need someone who is bringing a different set of skills to the table that can really complement who I am. And so, but that requires introspection, that requires reflection, that requires an honest look in the mirror. What are my strengths? What is in my zone of genius? And what are the things that the company needs to thrive, that I'm just not best positioned to do? And so that's been one big piece. And once I'd figured that out, that really allowed us to soar, right? Because I was no longer doing things that I could do, but that I wasn't best positioned
Yeah,
to do.
I love that. Let's just dig into just a little bit more, because
Sure.
sometimes we hear that sort of stuff, but like, what's it really look like? So you did some self introspection, and if it's not comfortable, you don't need to share. You could let's pretend it's someone else you're talking about that you were working with. Let's. What were the strengths that you discovered? I'm really good at this, and then what were the things that you could do, but you probably shouldn't, but you needed a strong second for? This wasn't a. I need an assistant to do this other stuff. This was a strong second who could sort it. Could you kind of break down what did you see specifically about yourself that you're like, I need to find this compliment and it needs to look like this? Like, talk us through that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So it's happened at different stages, right? So in the earlier years, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I was selling the work and I was
Hmm.
doing the work. And, I like to say I live in the country now. I like to say you can only chase one rabbit. So am I going to be excellent at selling? Am I going to be excellent at doing? And what I quickly realized was that, I was getting frustrated, quite frankly, with our clients and finding myself more and more irritable around sort of engaging in that work. And so I had to look at myself and say, what are you best positioned to do in the company? Right? You really only have two big jobs, which is like don't run out of money and hire the best people. So you need to hire someone who can deliver for the client. And you also need to be comfortable with letting them shine in a way that is maybe not the way you would do it, right? And that was hard, right? That was a lot of trial and error, and a phenomenal leader who's still with Offor, who is an absolute star now. But the two of us really working together and having some hard conversations, right, about creating the space and the freedom for her to show up as herself, right? Because the worst thing you can do is hire someone who's really talented and create an environment where they feel like they have to copy you to be successful. And that never works, right? And that we saw that happen where she would sort of try on, I like to use like clothing as a metaphor. She would like try on an outfit that looked good on me, but it didn't look good on her. Right. Right. And
Yes.
that never works. That
Yeah.
never works. Right. But as soon as I could let go and say, I trust you, you show up as yourself, right? That's when we really began to take off. Right. So that's sort of one example where I just had to understand that the doing of the work, the delivering of the work, that actually wasn't my highest and best use, that there was someone else who could do that better than me. And that was borne out in all of the fantastic feedback I would get from clients who absolutely loved her. Right. And that freed me up, right, to then go do what I was best situated to do. So that's one example.
Oh, I love that. And what I love is the way you said it centered on what you could do. It wasn't about she needs to quit trying to put on my
Mm,
dress.
mm.
It was about you letting go and trusting that she can dress herself
That's
just fine.
that's
And
right. That's exactly
her
right.
style and her way is going to work.
Yep.
I can trust that. Uh, but there's a challenge in that too, because I mean, you mentioned two key roles as a leader, and I'm going to throw a third one in. You mentioned it too, like don't run out of cash and get those right people, build that team,
Yep.
right? But there's also set the vision,
Yes.
and I can't have someone wearing an outfit that goes the wrong direction.
Right.
Like it's one thing to let yourself shine; it's another to not be shining the right way.
Right.
Like you're taking us a direction that's actually bad for our business. And
Right.
so there's that setting the vision. How did you distinguish between here's our core values, identity, purpose. So here's why we're here, who we are, what we're about. Now go about doing it as you want to, but you've got to live according to these core values. Like, I mean, your outfit has to still match the family pictures at
That's right.
least.
That's exactly right. I
so,
love that we're letting this metaphor continue. I love it. Thank you for going with me on this, David. Yeah, I appreciate that question. It's interesting because it actually brings up a challenge, right? That I'm sort of in this second moment, right? Is that so for in that particular instance at that time, it was really more of an apprentice model, right? Where she just spent so much time with me. I certainly cannot say that I, sort of sat down like a business school grad and like wrote the core values down and here are the thing. At that time, I actually had not done that, but it was really through working side by side with me, and there's opportunities for uh, constant feedback and reflection both ways, and just honesty, right? Like her mindset was just so extraordinary. Like she's a sponge, she's a learner. And so that proximity, she got to absorb over time. Okay, this is what Ify is trying to create, and this is the way we do things, right? And
Yeah.
now she is one of the
Yeah.
strongest culture bearers of the company, right? And she knows, right? It's like oxygen. Fast forward to now, I've hired a number two who now manages the team, and she is also equally as gifted and equally as strong. And but our team is bigger now, and everybody can't go through years and years of apprenticing for Ify. That's just not a scalable method. And so more recently in the last year, we did take the time to put down what is our vision, what is our
Yeah.
purpose, what are our values, and examples, so that even people who have not had an opportunity to work closely with me can at least begin to have a container and a foundation to begin to understand our vision and how we show up in the world. And then also by, what we're also now working on for the future is saying, okay, that's a starting point, it's a manual, but people still kind of need like a running buddy, right? They still need someone in the beginning to kind of help them begin to mirror and understand how we show up. So that's what we're in the messy middle, right? Again, as we think about the
Yeah.
next stage of growth.
No, I love that. I mean, there's the two sides in this fit. You know, the outfit's going to fit. There's a couple pieces of it. The first one is does it fit our vision, or does the person fit the vision? Do they fully embrace the purpose? And why don't you just tell us what is Ofor's purpose?
Yeah, we exist in the world to clear the path to the C suite for leaders from every walk of life. Historically, the path to the C suite has been pretty opaque. Only certain people could sort of, got the cheat code in terms of how to walk it. And we know that the world that we're trying to create is only going to be more perfected if we're all participating in it. And so that's why we exist. That's what we wake up every morning seeking to do.
That's awesome. And so, like, you get to have this calling, this beacon that says, if you love this,
Yes,
this is the place.
that's right.
Go to old school sci-fi. It's a tractor beam. It like locks on and like pulls those right people in.
That's right.
And that's an important part of the fit, along with the belonging. We have these core values that dictate how we go about interacting with everybody. This isn't a customer value proposition, although it enhances it. This is a who we are with each other, with vendors, with community, with people we place, with people we place for, with our families. Like, this is just who we are, and it's always who we've been, right? And so you have this bringing in. Great. So we have it. We fit on this side, but then in the role itself, how that translates out, you're now using a running buddy metaphor to say, we brought you in, we see you fit. Now let's see how it really plays out in your skills, in the practices, in the processes. Learn our way before you create a new one. Master what we've got, so then we know you know how to take it to that next level. And that is the key to scaling that team. Clarity in their roles and the right kind of onboarding development. So I love that. And it's a messy middle because you're at the beginning of doing and you're figuring things out. But what a solid foundation you have
Yeah.
with a great vision.
Yeah. Can
Um,
I add something to that, David? Because I
yeah,
love
yeah,
I
yeah.
love because you're also highlighting, another tension that, maybe other, founders, entrepreneurs are also facing as well, which is in that fit piece, right? Because one of the lessons that we learned was that when we brought in folks who had a high degree of experience in our particular area, that in some ways it was actually harder for them. And I didn't
Mm,
expect that, David. I didn't see that
yeah,
coming. I thought, you've done it before, you know, but it was in a different context. It was in a different culture. And so you end up with a lot of unlearning to do. But depending on the stage of your career, depending on your mindset, your orientation, you might actually not, you might think you're interested in doing that, but you're really not. But then when we would bring folks in who, they had a career, but maybe they hadn't done it in talent, they hadn't done executive search, there sort of was an understanding on both sides, both of that for them and for us, that there would be a lot of learning, and there was a lot of patience and grace given for that learning, and also hunger on their side because they knew they didn't know all the answers, they didn't have all the answers. And
Yeah.
so we've sort of learned that it's a tricky balance as you're growing, right? Because everyone can't be a learner. You need some guides too. So that's another thing that we've been grappling with, is what's the right balance or mix of those two.
Well, yeah, and it's not just a theoretical grappling, and this is costly.
Right.
Like,
Right.
how many of your customers suffered from having the expert plug-in who did it a different way?
I mean, I almost shudder to think about it, right?
Right.
Right. And also the cost to the team when we have to
Oh,
come
the team.
in.
Yeah, and they've got to all deal with that. It's like, you got a nice, calm swimming pool, everybody's happy, and then a hippopotamus jumps in the
That's
middle of it. The waves go everywhere. You've got the most rapid beast out there. You're like, "Wah!"
right.
Everything falls apart. Nobody's effective anymore. The cost of productivity to joy to retention is insane
Yes.
because we don't understand that. Both the culture fit, like the worst is highly capable, highly competent person who's not a culture fit.
Yep.
All that means is they're that much more capable of dismantling your business right
Mm.
in front of your eyes. Right? That's all that means is they're just really, really good. And then you got the other side, like I loved how you brought it up. The good culture fit, but their style of doing work was difficult enough. Like you were wearing you're like, girl, you're wearing the wrong clothes. This is
Right.
this is not a white tie affair,
Right.
right? This is different, and you're rubbing wrong in a lot of ways, and unlearning both for their side and our side of giving space to unlearn because we thought you knew, we
Right.
thought you knew, but no. um, I look at the stages of growth or of contribution to a business, and um, Brooke Durr and Ed Shine did work on this a long time ago. uh, Actually, scratch that, different model. This had to do with Novation's work. And so they did this work. Paul Thompson and Gene Dalton did some work, and they looked at everybody goes through a learner, and then an individual contributor, then a leads or contributes through others, like a leader,
Mhm.
and then a lead leaders or a director level, setting direction, strategy things. Like we all go at these levels, even your brand new CEOs you're placing,
Hmm.
that
Yes.
if they don't go in
Right.
and spend the first long time
Right.
learning, they mess it all up. And they can be like, dude, I'm an expert in this industry. I like, I ran the competitors who were running them into the ground, and now I'm leading this one. I know this business. No, you don't.
That's exactly
No,
right.
you don't.
That's exactly
Go
right.
in as a learner.
Yeah.
Now, we can't afford to stay there long though.
Hmm. Right.
And so the time frame needs to be defined, and the success as the learner needs to be measured.
Right.
You've succeeded as a learner when you've got this down. Then we're ready for you to do the next. And to move them through, no skipping stages. That only causes havoc. So to be intentional and in onboarding, think months. For some, maybe years, but in an onboarding, um, months to get them to where they're really contributing at the level that you originally hired them for,
Yeah.
and to be clear about those steps. So
You're so
anyway,
right, David. And I'll say that, going to you're building off of what you're talking about in terms of, the CEOs that we're placing, the chief level officers that we're placing, you're exactly right. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't also state that it's a balance, right? There's a part on the piece of the new hire, the new CEO and executive. And I'll say, really humbly, we've learned a lot internally, and then we turn it over to our clients, is that what we've also seen is that the organizations themselves, they need to understand that, right? Because what
yeah,
we've seen is that oftentimes when they are hiring and there's so much expectation on that new leader, there's almost this sense of like, look, we've hired you, like like kind of like hands off, like you figure it out, like you should know what to do, as though just because you're a CEO, you too don't have to learn. And so it can put that individual who's coming in at a real disadvantage if the people in the organization don't have an expectation that it's their job to work and support this individual, right? And we've seen it with
Right.
boards who are sort of like, yep, we're looking at strategy, we're looking at our metrics, but they're not focused on the CEO's development, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
seeing that that is also beyond their fiduciary duties, but also part of something that they need to keep an eye on. So it's really from both angles. It's the organization also needs to understand that it is mission critical and it is their job, right? That it's
Yeah.
not the job of the individual to solely onboard and integrate themselves.
No, I love that you bring that up. That kind of clarity is important at every single level in your business. We often, when we're between 10 and 30 employees, which most of the listeners are, right? When we're between that 10 and 30, we think we're hiring someone so they'll solve the problem
Right.
that we've got. And the reality is no, the problem still belongs to you.
Hmm.
You've hired someone to work with you to
Hmm.
solve the problem that you've had. And your job is to help them get to that spot until they can fully solve it and solve future problems that are going to come up. So you can step away and then go and fix another thing, right? As you continue to grow. We don't actually outsource our problems as quickly as we all think we can. The pill, taking a pill to solve every medical issue you've got actually doesn't work. You've got to get exercise, you've got to get the right sleep, and you have to eat healthy. You've got to do the work. You still own the problem, and we're going to work with that doctor
Right.
to figure some things out, right?
That's
And
exactly right.
so, no, I love that you brought that up. And again, the cost of not doing it right. I mean, every one of us has had this. My business isn't growing. I'm seeing 30%, what we were planning on growing, we were flat because we didn't solve X, Y, and Z problems. So we're talking about somewhere between 300,000 and a million, let's say, in revenue that we're not realizing getting because we're hiring someone on and then it's failing. And then we're rehiring somebody on and it's failing. Or worse, we hired somebody on and it's not working, but it'll catch up. And I go about doing my thing. I hope they try on enough clothing until it fits right. And they're still there 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months later, still not succeeding the way we had hoped. Oh well, we added 100,000 instead of 300 or a million, which was the plan. We almost covered their cost. Isn't that how it really happens on the daily in our business? And I'm not talking about CEO, that's more expensive. I'm just talking about line level entry employee.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I think it's a skill, right? That, I've had to learn other peers that I'm, in community with, just like what's that right balance, right? Because it's if you're a self-reflective leader, you can always look at things that you should have done better, right? And so it can be tempting to sort of say, okay, but if I do this, and if I do this, and if I do this, and if I do this, like maybe we can fix it. And sometimes you actually can, right? And that's the thing, right? It's like, but it's this sort of art and science of knowing, can we do a reset here, right? And make sure we get back on track, or is it time to make the transition and and transfer this person out. And um every leader's got to figure that out, right? And figure out how
Yeah.
to do that in a way that honors the business and also honors the individual as well, because at the end of the day, if it's not working out, at least my perspective, I think that's on me as a leader. I made the hire, right? If this person's
Yeah.
reporting to me, I made that choice, right? And so we have to just sort of honor that and then also honor the individual as well.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. You're not doing anyone a favor by keeping them around where they're failing. They don't get to go home feeling like a winner. They know the key metrics for their success are not being hit. And I was part of doing that to
Mm,
them. So now I can make a choice. I have a chance now to coach them up or to coach them out, but I can't wait 3 more months to begin that process. It has to begin today. The moment I'm thinking that I'm wondering, that I'm questioning. It starts now.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And David, I don't know if the founders or entrepreneurs that you work with do this, but one of the things that we've done at O4, and we've had to do that at at our company internally, but also with our clients, to sort of mitigate this, because the cost, as you say, is so high, especially when an executive leaves. And nationally, something like 40 to 50% of executives who are hired from the outside are actually not considered successful in their first 18 months. They're sort of underperforming. And so one of the things that we did was that we designed a talent and culture audit. So before we, help an organization hire, we start by doing an audit first to really unearth that culture piece and the context and the leader that they'll be working with. And then when we get to sort of finalist candidates, those candidates sign an NDA, and then they all get a copy of the audit so that they also have a full understanding of
What they're buying
what
into.
they're buying. What you're saying yes to is what we love to say.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you think it's one thing, but most of us can't fully see ourselves. And so talking to multiple people, collecting multiple stories, and then handing that over can be challenging as a founder because it can feel very personal. But I've also found that it can help reduce the number of, you know, uh, individuals that don't quite fit, because they get
Yep.
a chance to sort of see the sort of things you learn in the first 90 days. They get it before they start, right? So that they can decide for themselves.
And it's not just for that individual you're hiring in. It's to avoid the carnage to the rest of your team once they come
That's
on board.
exactly right.
Right? I mean, it's so painful. It's so costly. It's like all the works come to a screeching halt when the wrong one's in there, and we've all seen that.
Yeah.
Yes, our community, our inner circle, we'll call them, are very attuned to that.
Mm,
And what you're doing, funny enough, ties back to the beginning. For those who haven't gotten clear about their vision, this culture audit piece that you do is actually a massive leap forward on getting the core values nailed down.
mm,
Right, that little bit of information. Now let's build the phrases around it. Now let's build the definition around it. Now let's put the examples around it where we've lived it, not what we hope we
right.
are.
Right.
That's not core values. I'm talking about what we really are.
Right.
Now if we've got some black eyes, let's work on them.
Right.
But let's talk about what we really are, because that's what's going to fit, and
That's
then we
right.
can work from there. So that's powerful stuff, Ify, and what a powerful tool. What a powerful tool for people to access and use. So I have to decide if we shift gears or if we shorten this. I mean, we got to talk about some issues we weren't even planning on
Right.
talking about, and I think there was some great meat around it. Evie, you just talked about a tool that I think everyone could use. Let's just let's just kind of wrap it up a little bit. How could they get in touch with you or with Offor in order to access this kind of help, this sort of insights? How would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So they can find us at www.o4, that's O, F as in Frank, F as in Frank, O, R as in Robert, .co. And then you can also follow me on LinkedIn, and that's just Ify Walker. That's I, F as in Frank, Y, and last name Walker, Walker, on LinkedIn.
Perfect. I can't endorse more strongly the need for such an audit or clarity around your vision for you to build the right team in order to make sure you don't run out of cash.
That's
So,
exactly right.
right, that's the work. That's the work that we do every day. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, and we're just delighted again that we were able to have Evie on the call with us. Thank you for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you so much, David. It's been a pleasure.
For all of you listening in, I hope you'll share, like, do all the things that make this episode more available to all other seven figure bonuses or business owners out there. Just keep striving, keep learning, keep caring, keep growing, keep pushing towards your goals. Until next time.